Now we're going to be showing you how to configure these boxes. The first thing you want to do is connect these boxes up. So the first connector you want to plug in is, of course, the power connector. This is how you power on the device. Next up, we have your Ethernet. So for simple configuration, just use LAN 1, connect that up. Everything could go through LAN 1. Then finally, you have your HDMI ports. Since these boxes are fully configurable, you could connect anywhere from 1 to 4 HDMI cables per box, depending on your configuration. Once you have your Mura DVWs connected, you simply power it on. The next step will be to find your devices on your network. The good thing about the Mura DVW is you really just need to find one device. So how do you find your device? There's multiple different ways you can do it. First one is by simply looking on your screens. A little information box will appear once the device is powered, which will give you its serial number, as well as its IPv4 and IPv6 addresses if available. You really just need one of these to connect to your unit. The second method is by looking on your cardboard box. Here you will have the serial number. Now, yet again, you could use the serial number to connect to your configuration app. The next tool you can use to find your devices is called the Matrox Unified Utility. The Matrox Unified Utility is a little app you could pick up on our website, download, install on your computer, and after you launch it, it will detect all Matrox devices that are available on the network, give you some basic information, and this utility could also be used to update your devices if need be. Once you have the serial number or the IP address of one of your units, this is where you open up your favorite browser and type that in. So as you guys can see, here I am using the serial number and logging into my box. Now before I get to my web page, I am introduced with a little page that shows you a little warning because of the certificates. So here we just accept that, and finally we are in. Now the first thing I need to do is create an account. So I click on sign in, I put in my first and last name, and click next. I will be asked for a password. Here we also says what kind of different requirements I have. So I create a password. And then finally, I have an account created. So now that I'm signed into my page, now that I'm logged into my unit, so if I want to use all the units, I now first have to create an account. By clicking Control, I can select multiple units so that I make this process a little bit easier and simply reuse the same password on them because they will be belonging to the same wall. Click Create, and that will create and automatically sign me up. Once signed up, I can then simply click, drag, and drop my units in to start building my wall. Now that your devices are on the wall, the first little thing you want to do before properly configure them is updating your firmware. So to check if your firmware needs updating, that's easily done by looking at the version down here. If you do notice that a newer version is available on the Matrox website, then you download it on your computer, and then you will go into the VW here, click on Firmware Update, select the file on your computer, click Next. It will ask you which devices to update. It is highly recommended you update all the devices. Click Update, and this will update your devices. Now that all my devices have an account created and are logged in, I could simply take them and drag them onto my canvas. This will automatically add them to the wall. At this point, I just want to create and configure these devices so that they match how they are physically connected to the monitors on my wall. Now, for today's demonstrations, our devices are connected in a single row. So we want to pick each one of these devices and set them up as a 4x1. Once that is done, that should more closely match what we have on the wall. We could look at configuring other things, such as my display resolution. By default, you should have your default native resolution selected, so there should not be any need to configure that. We have our vertical and horizontal adjustment, so that could be used to do things like bezel compensation, which we will do in a minute. Other than that, we have some other settings, for example, your XY position. If you prefer doing it manually, you could do this instead of dragging and dropping. We also have some extra little details on the boxes, such as just some statistics on it, as well as versioning. And finally, network settings. These boxes come in DHCP out of factory, but if you wish to configure them in static, this can be done at this stage. The last bit of important information is your PTP time. So the synchronization with these appliances is done using PTP. By default, they are set to BMCA. What that means is they will automatically look at your network and see if a PTP time, a PTP clock already exists. If it already exists, it will synchronize to that time. If it doesn't, one of your units will generate a clock and the two others will synchronize to him. From a user's point of view, everything should be automatic. This page can be used to do some basic troubleshooting, or for advanced users, the advanced panel can be activated and they can play around with the rest of the settings. Once you are happy with your setup, you click Save. Once your configuration is saved, now the units know exactly where they are positioned in the wall, who they need to talk to, and how they need to synchronize. The last step is what we call live mode. So live mode is there to help you do fine-tuning of your video wall. So what that does is when you activate live mode, a nice little grid appears on the wall, which shows you the serial numbers of the different devices, their outputs, and a couple of little lines that are there to help you align them. So there are a couple of different things you want to do here. The first one is you want to make sure that what you have on your canvas corresponds to what you have on your wall, which, as you can see, for me in my setup, this is exactly what I have. The second one is if you want to do physical adjustments to your monitor, this is the step at which you want to do. You could use the different grid lines here to help you align the monitors better to make sure that everything is properly installed. And then finally, if you need to do some extra adjustment, for example, to compensate for bezels, or if you're using projectors to do edge overlap, this is also where you want to do this. Yet again, the grid lines here help you align everything together. Now, I know what my bezel values here are. They're about 100 pixels, so I will just enter that in my app. And as you guys can see, the grids move around and all my little lines now are lined up perfectly well.